We're very happy. Well, I'm very happy to be here, and I want to welcome and present the people here with us for this first presentation about the mindfulness and better awareness in our life and in the business world, in educational world, and also in the health world. To talk about this subject, we have Christophe Fauré, who is both therapist and specialized in the support system when we have deep changes in our life, such as divorce or grief. He has written important books, many, but the most important that we will talk about here is Living Morning Day to Day and Broken Couple. And Christophe Fauré has lived for 2 years in a Tibetan monastery about 15 years ago and discovered there, or practiced meditation, apart from other things. And he is trained in what we called NBCT, which is a mindfulness-based training. And there we have and here's Geneviève Hamelet, who is a president of the ADM, the Association for the Development of Mindfulness. She founded this association who trains people in mindfulness and trains both people to this technique and another other technique, which is the emotional and contemplative therapy. She will talk about this more on Saturday in her workshop. So you have diploma in sophrology and practiced sophrology but doesn't practice anymore, it seems. Maybe you can react to what I'm saying. Maybe I'm saying silly things. Please, no, I do practice sophrology. I'm still practitioner of that and practice meditation for more than 20 years now and teaching now mindfulness. And finally, Sébastien Henry, who is more in the domain of business world, we would say. Not only that, of course, but the diploma and a graduate of ESSEC, and with a degree in philosophy and psychology. For about 10 years, he has been business leader in China and Japan, and is now is a coach for big businessmen around the world, actually. Business leaders and international corporations. So has been doing meditation for at least 15 years. We, I think, don't need to speak different languages in order to do meditation, but so I would like to offer you the opportunity to talk about this theme. Maybe start with the definition of what each of you think about what is the awareness of oneself and awareness of others. What does that entail?
Yes, self-awareness and awareness of others. In the question, one of the answers is the relationship side. both, I think, function together. And even in terms of awareness, when we talk about awareness, the functioning of awareness is based on a good relationship, or because no awareness without object, no object without awareness. So we're already in this notion of interrelationship, which is absolutely crucial for me. And so the question really is, of what awareness are we talking about? Between oneself and oneself and the other. But for me, the question of when we learn about something, about ourselves, it's very important to make the distinction between ordinary awareness or consciousness, which we usually talk about from a conceptual point of view, or in terms of automatic impulses, and which means that we can be a little bit blinded. We may have behavior which follows on accordingly. But what we're talking about here is more an awareness which is incarnated, which is which to come back within the body, which is also a very important point, which is awareness which is full of sensitivity and an emotional awareness, which is much broader, which means that we're really able to be aware of all the elements in the situation that we find ourselves in. And to do so, so that there really is a relationship, so that there really is a link with the other, it will go through closeness to oneself, self-proximity in this dimension of awareness, and which is felt on the deepest possible level. And on the basis of this, we can open up to the other without being in a defense mechanism process, and really welcome the other. Welcome oneself, welcome the other, be aware of oneself and be aware of the other. So, Christophe, maybe you'd like to say a word to come back to what this means to you?
So I would say awareness of oneself could be, on a psychological level, is more how do I see myself? What stories do I tell about myself in order to tell myself who I am? And this is often nourished by all the very young part of our life. When I was a little boy, who was I? How people saw me? Was I perfect? A person with a lot of important things to say and to share, or was I boring? And all these aspects will be the way that I will understand on a psychological level who I am. Based on these very early age experiences, and based on these kind of dialogues we have inside of ourselves, this is based on that we will relate to others, and it will be in a sometimes very biased way, because maybe I thought, when I was a young child, maybe I thought I was really bad and really just never capable of anything good. My brother was much better than me, and based on this, then when I relate with my boss, I will inevitably say, "Oh, Carol," he might say, "Carol, you haven't finished this very well." I will not perceive the situation as my boss saying, "How are you doing? Could you please improve this particular thing?" I will just feel, "Oh, that's it. He really thinks I'm really bad and useless," and it will confirm this belief that I have, and I will not be in this pure awareness of myself, but will be in this awareness that I have kind of learned of myself, and through this filter I will interact with others, and how I will actually maybe not see them for who they are. Like my boss, I will see him as a persecutor, because the war is already in myself. And if I want to stop this war that is outside, this outside war that we may witness, we must first appease the war in ourselves. So this is the starting point before this relationship, which is the base of the relationship. So to be aware of my own mind and of these stories that I constantly give to myself, offer to myself, feed myself. This is very important, and I will talk about it Saturday at 10 o'clock.
Sébastien, Henri, would you like to add something here? Yes, I don't have much to add here in terms of self-awareness. Just perhaps something to add about the link between self-awareness and awareness of others. What really strikes me in business when I speak in companies is the extent to which 1, 2, 3 people who practice together in a team will sometimes have a different quality in their exchanges, and this will really change the dynamic of the team. And this is a real illustration. Sometimes we can say that one person isn't going to change much in a team, but I can assure you that if there are 15 or 20 people, you can see the extent to which that when just a few people in that team are aware of themselves and progressively add a new breath to the team, this really becomes something remarkable. The team that the people that I work with, I'm going to try not to go too quickly because of our translators here, but beyond this question of being aware of oneself, there's also the question of social awareness. And what's very striking, and I'll talk about this more tomorrow, is the extent to which after a certain point of practice and level of mindfulness, people involved in business, through their energy and enthusiasm, rethink their role in society and see it in a different way. And the time of quality presence within the team, for example, creates the right kind of fertile ground for bringing to the surface things and making relationships much more agreeable. When they look at the role that they play within society and within different teams and what their contribution can be, and how to make a stronger contribution, the kind of model that you can invent, etc. So I think there really is this question of self-awareness, awareness of others in the team and in the company, as well as in terms of our role in society. And this is what fascinates me in the work that we can do in business, which we often consider this as a rather difficult terrain, which is rather impermeable to anything that comes from outside. We're always concentrating on performance, etc. And there is some of this, it's true, but there's so much beauty, there are so many things that can be grown within this fertile soil, this image of flowers that grow in the earth. And I'm always very pleased to be able to make the link between these 3 different aspects. Thank you very much, Sébastien. So, in fact, there's no real definition, a fixed definition of what it means to be aware of oneself and to be aware of others. And it's a good thing, in fact, that there's no precise definition. So it's really up to each of us to question our own notions. So I'm just going to ask you, each of you, if you could tell us about your greatest awareness of yourself, if you like, self-awareness, which we try to develop, and awareness of others, which we try to develop. What the benefits of this are for Christophe Fauré? Perhaps you could tell us what the benefits are in terms of health and also in terms of the psyche.
I think the immediate benefit is if through a better understanding of myself I can identify more clearly modes of functioning which are repeating themselves again and again, or thought patterns that I repeated again and again, and that whatever situation I'm in, I'm constantly gluing these schemes or these ways on the situation, then to know these schemes, maybe to feel myself constantly put down or criticized, or to know that whatever the situation, I'm constantly gluing this on top of it, then to be aware of that. And I'm always talking about this because I know this so well, that the benefit of knowing this, of being aware of this, of seeing these ways, these schemes, and to start to identify, but are there alternative ways? Because if we constantly go in an automatic mode and reproducing these schemes constantly, then there will be no change. But if we see these schemes and we better understand ourselves, maybe also our beliefs, our negative beliefs also on ourselves, then to experience this, then we will have more. The main benefit is more to have more freedom in what we decide to do, or we are constantly stuck and we're stuck in these patterns, or we have space. It's as Eckhart Tolle says in his different books, who talks to us about our stories and how to be aware of these stories. Then we can maybe disengage and understand or start to think that I am not these stories, I am not these mental functionings, and then choose to decide to do things in a different way. To know that I have this heritage of all these mental thoughts, and to know that when my boss comes to me and says, finish this job, if I know all these schemes, if I'm aware of all this, and then I can actually welcome the situation as it is, and maybe see that actually my boss is just asking me at this point to please finish this job. And he's not saying, you, my little boy, you are really so bad, and your father was really right to say all these things to you. He's not saying that. So the main benefit is to find freedom anew.
So even if somebody says that you're rubbish, and does it really help you to make you more aware, perhaps? Does it help you to not feel ill at ease about this?
So the question is, okay, if somebody comes and says you're really full of shit, do I believe this? So this is, okay, maybe I've been told that I'm really crap, but do I need to believe this? In psychotherapy, often we say, okay, you're bad. That's what your belief is. Is it true? Is it true? Prove to me that this is true. Are you really 100% crap? Well, I don't know. Actually, I'm not always. Give me 3 examples that it's not true that you're always crap. Oh, that's true. And then you look at these 3, and then you say, oh, but how is it when you believe that you're really crap? Oh, well, when I believe that, then I feel bad about myself, I feel sad, I feel cut from others. Okay, what if you don't feel that? Maybe if you don't really believe it, how does it change? Well, I would just feel much better. I would feel more at ease. If I didn't have this thought in my mind and didn't believe in it, then I would be more relaxed. This is this whole work process that we go through to show each person that you are constantly believing these thoughts, that, and then to know that it's not because one person said you're crap that you need to believe that ultimately. Is that clear?
Sébastien Henry. So I'm going to ask you the question about the benefits of better self-awareness in relation to your work. So it's not that I want to put each of you into boxes, but I think each of you comes from this particular background, and it's quite useful, as you come from the work world, maybe to be able to answer from this point of view. It's a very wide question, nevertheless, but in Sebastian's books, I think that might give you an idea. There's one that is called "When the Deciders Get Inspiration from Monks, Find Their Inspiration in Monastics." And there's 9 principles to give meaning to your actions. So the benefits of a better self-awareness in a relationship in work or in the work world. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes, I'm glad that you said that I don't feel closed in this box, having said this, but for the last week I spent most of my time looking after my 2 children. So I'm a lot of mindfulness involved in the practice of education of children. But here I'm going to be talking more particularly about the business context. And without going into this at length, the 3 subjects that I really care about are in relation to self-awareness and mindfulness, and these can really nourish a company on a daily basis. And first of all, there's the question about the possibility of finding a moment where, rather than getting uptight about the performance aspects that we want to reach in a company, or where we would fix objectives, which you do so well in business, generally speaking, and this is what often happens, i.e. when we realize that we're not going to reach the objective, we start to get uptight, and there's a lot of tension going on, and in our relationships with other people, and we tend to contaminate people around us, and this has happened to me quite an impressionable number of times. And the question of self-awareness means that I can find the moment when this tension is created amongst the people around me. And meditation on acceptation, for example, is one of the practices which means that you can go into your inner space, which allows us to continue to reach our objectives, because the company has to go on continuing and reach its objectives as far as possible. But we have to look into oneself to see how we're progressing within this objective without this tension arising in me. So it's this collective harmony which we're looking for. And what always touches me is that when I look at people who believe they knew one themselves because they've been working, or each other rather, because they've been working together for a long time, 5-10 years, and they realize that they have perhaps missed a whole dimension of each other. And so when they work together, they practice together on self-awareness, they're able to create a whole different dynamic and a depth of human wealth, which is much greater, and in companies, it's the richness of the wealth of the people, of the personnel, which really creates the wealth of the company. And in some cases, it's fear which reigns in companies, where you can see a lot of tension and energy. And in others, you can feel there's a real harmony, and this is a real strength of the company. The third benefit is, for me, the right decision-making. So we have a lot of decisions to take in business, often very quickly, important decisions. And the way in which this self-awareness enables us to listen to and think of the right decision which emerges from the situation. And this is a very precious thing. We work on self-awareness, and we are on our path. I've followed masters who've transmitted this practice, but increasingly there's an increasing capacity to feel the voice of the ego, which invites us to go into take one decision as opposed to another, which is the right, wise decision, which means that we might take a different direction. So I think that, at least amongst the heads of business that I work with every day, it helps them to take better decisions on a more lively human basis. And the possibility or the ability to avoid the tension when you feel that the objective is going to be difficult to reach. And so I think these are major things for many of us in business today. Thank you. So perhaps, Geneviève, would you like to create a link to see if there are common points between greater self-awareness and awareness of others that we talked about in the context of health or mental health, or in the work of world. Perhaps we can also talk in terms of education and in daily life in general. Can you see any links? Yes, there are links already between what was said by Christophe and Sébastien. These are two notions of freedom and space. Absolutely. And I would say that in terms of the links, this will be much broader, because the common point of all these fields in our lives is our humanity. And for me, this is important, regardless of the context, that these minds of this come back to this notion of self-awareness and awareness of others, which is much more refined. And this applies to all the fields, whatever their form. But we have to be very careful that we don't get lost in the frame of reference, and to keep in touch with the essence of the phenomenology of life, which is deployed and which is unrolling in one or another type of context. And as Christophe said, this question of freedom, which is crucial, in that if I have better awareness of myself, I also realize my role in the way that the reality takes place, in the way it's composed, as Christian showed us so well just now. which means that we're all perhaps also able to change our perception or look at new facets, which gives us greater freedom in as compared to the prism, the conceptual prism that I'd set up before. In regard to what Sébastien said, this comes back to what Christian said, in that we may find ourselves in a certain situation where we realize that I'm much wider or broader than when I have self-awareness, than simply in terms of sensations and thoughts, when I'm really able to take on all the dimensions, because often we're fixed and set on a particular aspect, and we forget that we're not just this. And I think this is really important, to be able to access these different forms of internal resources, which means that regardless of the situation that we're facing, we're able to find a certain stability and to not be completely caught up with our vulnerability or with using the various filters that we use. So we're going to perhaps move on now to try to understand what we can do. I'm going to hand over to Christophe Fauré to what we can do to develop this greater self-awareness and awareness of others.
So the theme of the conference is about mindfulness, and the past 2 decades has been developed, or the mindfulness has kind of come into the world of psychotherapy to try and optimize the psychological work or process. So the practice of meditations that we may practice in a therapeutic environment, or the MBCT. For example, there is a man who is in conflict with his wife, and maybe if he's not aware of himself and he's going there without any mindfulness, okay, they will start to start talking, and a conflict will pop up again and again. Fight. But if this person practices meditation, mindfulness, and is aware of this anger when it arises, and is aware, can recognize the energy of anger, and can learn to see all the images from the past that have given birth to this anger, maybe something else will happen, which is that there will be a slight space between the experience and ourselves, which will bring us to come and say, oh, again, anger. Oh, these sensations, I know them. Oh, maybe I can make the decision not to go there. And maybe this anger, this tension, this impression that I am being aggressed or by my wife, maybe I've worked on these schemes that I have, the past memories of this mother that was always putting me down and telling me I was never good enough, and how as a child I was always overwhelmed by this, and how it created so many schemes in me that when I'm with my wife, I see the same things popping up, this same anger and the feeling that I'm never good enough, and the same sensation, the physical sensation. And it is not that meditation will actually change that, but will give conditions where I can perceive this, and in this space of this, when this reactivation of these schemes, of these images from the past and these sensations, when this happens, I will have more space to be able to interact with my wife. Of course, we have problem with our wife. Okay, that's fine. But that I don't tint these with something else. At least I try, through the practice of meditation, to not tint all my reactions with all these things that are automatic and that are from the unconscious aspect of myself. So the meditation, the process of learning mindfulness, and I'm always inviting my patients through very simple tools to develop this calmness, this ease that meditation brings in us, in order to use it to be more aware of what is happening, what is popping up in us, and not in order to really have the consciousness and not confuse what is happening from the past and what is happening from the present moment. And because we always have this thing, we think, oh, but take a little bit of space with everything that's happening in your mind. But it's not so easy. It's not so easy to do, right? So, but with the practice of meditation, we see that we can do this much more easily, because we can really have moments where we can see the thought rise, the anger arise, and we don't go there. We're not drawn in it as much. That is why the practice of meditation is so powerful. Of course, in itself, it appeases, it calms. This practice of meditation, it puts in contact with the fundamental aspect of ourself, which is fundamentally kind, which is shockingly contradictory to what we might think to be our own essence. But this, I'm starting to talk to you about what I want to say on Saturday, so I should stop. I should really stop. So yes, as I said, maybe I didn't say, Christophe Fauré is, of course, supporting the problems that we are faced of in life, and breakup, but also couple problems, breakups in a couple. And maybe, Sébastien Henry, you could talk about your own experiences of meditation. You've been practicing meditation for more than 15 years, every day. Could you tell us, give us examples of what it brings to you in your work, in your business work, as a leader?
Well, the first part, in what concerns me, perhaps, and then in terms of the people who I'm working with, where I can speak much more with my heart than in some audiences that I have to speak in front of. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to open up your heart. And even though I really force myself to speak as much about this as possible, because it's important to be able to speak about opening your heart. But over the last 15 years, what's really struck me the most has been this progressive opening of the heart. I hope I can get the right expression for this, so that my heart is less and less narrow and constricted, if you like. And this is important for me to see the extent to which this morning practice allowed me during the day to have time to, with a much better quality of presence, so that rather than moving straight into action each time, so that I was able to link up with a person and to see that this person has an important thing to say, or this person has to be approached in an important way. And so this was really my fundamental experience. Then when we look at it on a broader basis, some of you work in business, and I think we're in a context here which is a very exciting one, but there are constraints, and the constraints, not in terms of self-development, but the constraints exist in the fact that not everybody is interested in this subject, and we have to respect people's choices and sensitivities. But even beyond this question of lay or non-lay, I think that in every tradition or spiritual tradition, you will find people who say, I'm not at all interested in anything spiritual, and they may have other areas to explore. But in companies, we have the brain athletes types where people are judged, evaluated, and assessed in terms of their ability to exercise their brain muscle and make the right kind of decisions. And I think the fact that there is this double constraint gives a priority in daily action, in any case, with people, to practice that is based on breathing, which is based on something other than this mental capacity. I'm not going to sweep this away, but there are a lot of experience or experiments with managers in laboratories where for for a few moments of the day, we're not going to be working on a mental level, but we're going to be working on our breath, looking at our heart. And the second constraint is that it has to be completely secular. And all the teams that I work with have really appreciated the fact that there's an opening, as I always say. If you're a Christian, if you're a Buddhist, regardless of your religious persuasion, there is a tradition in self-awareness and awareness of the others, and you can explore this further. But the work that we're going to be working on is on a secular basis. I was the work done by John Kabat-Zinn, for example, and the mindfulness team is extremely important. And this is important in companies today, but there's a big step that a lot of people haven't been able to make yet. I'm going to be talking about this a little bit tomorrow, is how we can get people to feel in the company, people tend to be pragmatic, how this can be useful to them. And then, if we manage to do this, we get into this sensitive area, and things can perhaps go astray, and how we can put into service what we've learned, how these practices, how they can be used to be useful without losing their souls. So we wouldn't work. Otherwise, I'm not going to say too much because I'll be stealing on what I'm going to be saying tomorrow. So, just one last word here, because this is why I took the risk. I didn't really want to do this to begin with, but to be talking about meditation in company. I respect people who would prefer to talk about mindfulness and would prefer to use this term, but there's no shame in companies in talking about these practices like meditation, because they can be useful for other people and for the society as a whole. So to answer your question, mindfulness meditation in business is this practice which is particularly useful. So is it just a question of performance in the company? Is that do we use meditation or mindfulness meditation to get better performance in business? I think that the imperative of performance is so strong in business and also in terms of economics that in companies we talk to men and women about a meditation or mindfulness program. The imperative is always to do things quickly, and I don't think we should judge this negatively, but the issue is to be able to define what performance actually means to them, and this is where I think it can have a wonderful effect, because I meet deciders and managers who will say that performance is only a level of profitability, for example. One or two may say this, but I meet very few who restrict their definition to that. In performance, there's also, as I said earlier, the quality of interaction between teams, the pleasure of working together, creativity, and in fact, when you really take the time to listen to what's important to the people you're working with, you can find the connection. There's a resonance. There's a common space. It demands a bit of work and effort, but I'm convinced that it's possible. Christophe Fauré, meditation, is it just about being better and having a better relationship in your couple?
Yeah, that's not bad, isn't it? I mean, why not? Yeah, that's not bad for a start, isn't it? To be more centered, to be more aware of oneself, of who we really are, this can only appease our relationship with others. And if we go a little bit further, just a little tad, about the use of meditation, which is actually to recognize the nature of mind, what we fundamentally are. This meeting, in essence, and this is not only the teachings of the Buddha that say so, but this experience, we can have it ourselves, is in essence the fact of taking off or to withdrawing from all these beliefs of ourselves that are kind of conceptual and come back to who we are in our essence will naturally bring forth better concern for others, because we perceive how fundamentally their nature is absolutely the same as the nature of my children, the nature of another person there, and to have this resonance for this fundamental sameness which we find in meditation. This, of course, helps to dissolve this me, the other, and come back to something deeper where we find, which is maybe not very objective or conscious, like where we say, my nature of Buddha is the same as yours, so we should get along. No, it's not like that. But there might be something very subtle where maybe in a couple, this brings pacification. I have invited 2 people in a couple to just sit and meditate. And even without a very deep psychological work on the inner problems, just to sit together really brought this connectedness. So how the meditation, the mindfulness can be used as a tool to train the mind, can come to something more fundamental that helps us. And that is therapeutic, I think.
Yes, I'd like to come back to that, because this notion as well of heart that we were talking about, and which naturally emanates, because this is what strikes me in the MBSR groups when we talk about these interventions based on mindfulness, MBCT and MBSR. And there's no formal practice of compassion and loving kindness other than this particular moment during the day of silence. But what I find magnificent in what you say is that it's something that develops naturally. And in a group, as these sessions go by with the meditation questions, mindfulness, etc., but naturally there is this dimension of loving kindness which develops in relation to people's lives and what they can say about their lives. And this is really magnificent, because it's not an exercise that they've been given, because there's a lot of research has been done on compassion practices, for example, which exist in the tradition. But for me, without this being formally asked of them, it's the fruit of the practice, and it happens systematically in virtually all the groups. And so for me, it really is a dimension which was important for me as well. This dimension, my own practice of kindness and the desire for excellence or perfection, which isn't necessarily about kindness. And this is something which I've experienced myself, and I see particularly in this MBSR. In these groups. And paradoxically, there's also the fact that when you're in an immobile state and you invite people to sit, it leads us to greater awareness of movement, of natural movement, which is part of life, because life is a series of instants, of moments, and in each situation that we find ourselves in, it's a transitory moment. Our sensations change, our thoughts change, our emotions change, and this is something which emerges very quickly, this awareness, and which means that we also have the freedom to no longer get fixed or frozen in ideas of reality or latch on to particular ideas, but which creates a kind of traces. It gives us a fluidity in the experience, which is also highly therapeutic. So I'm going to suggest that you don't remain fixed to reality and frozen in reality. Particularly, there have been a lot of notions and lots of ideas have been broached here. John Cabot-King, MBSR, MBCT, and all these different notions that we'll be looking at in more detail in the coming days. So I'd like to thank you all very much. Thank you, Christophe Fauré, Geneviève Hamelet, and Sébastien Henry.